Hi, everybody. I've got 11:01. Thank you all for being here today. We'll go ahead. We have a quorum and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I will call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Brennan.
Present.
Mr. Burgess.
Present.
Ms. Gleason. Present. Ms. Herbert. Did I hear that? Representative Howard. Mr. Lawson. Mr. Unthank.
Here.
You, Dr. Morris.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
I'm here.
Ms. Teresa.
Here.
Councilman Walker. I'll call the advisory board members. Mr. Kane. Mr. Green. Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Coon. Ms. Robinson. And Ms. Summers. You do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. That brings us to item 2, the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, changes suggested from staff? Hearing and seeing none. Is there a motion regarding the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. We'll call the roll for the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Brennan.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Yes.
Ms. Gleason.
Yes.
Ms. Herbert. Representative Howard. Mr. Lawson. Mr. Unthank.
Yes.
Dr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Teresa.
Yes.
Councilman Walker. Motion carries.
Thank you. That will bring us to item 3, Chernoff Newman presentation. Mr. Brown.
Where would y'all like me to?
Folks usually kind of stand like kind of in the middle. And is that okay?
No, that's fine. I'll get out of the way of the projector. My name is Ryan Brown. I'm with Chernoff Newman. I think usually when you hear and see Chernoff Newman, you hear and see Rick Silver. So apologies, I'm not Rick. I won't be as fun and animated as you're probably used to getting presentations from Rick. He's visiting our nation's capital, so I'm the stand-in today. Again, yeah, Ryan Brown. I'm the public sector director for Chernoff Newman, so I work with a lot of our local and state government clients. Actually came out of state government for better part of a decade. I was the chief communications officer with the South Carolina Department of Education. Part of that wonderful job was I got to advocate for and communicate the needs and issues of our state's 6,000 school bus fleet and the hundreds of thousands of students that ride it every day. So I have a deep appreciation for the work that you all do in terms of the transit here in the Midlands area. What I was asked to do today is just kind of give a brief overview of Chernoff Newman's work with both Richland County and also with the Comet. And really what this comes from is a directive from county council to staff to look holistically at the impact of the penny over the last decade or so. Really the work with the Comet started thanks to Pam, really before that directive, so kudos there. And then more recently been working with Spinnett and Ms. O'Kane at Richland County and the administration there to look at that from the top level. And I think it goes without saying, you know, there's been communications and good communications updates on the penny's impact since its inception in 2012, but there hasn't been a holistic look on what it has done and really what Richland County has done. So a piece of this is kind of telling that holistic story. I know people like to get into the weeds and the nitty-gritty details of what about this sidewalk and this road, but we often lose focus on the holistic impact of what it's done over the last 10 years or so. So we've been working diligently with the staff here at the Comet, the staff in Richland County to really pull together some great metrics on what the holistic impact is. And we're now in this kind of storytelling mode where we're beginning to go out into the community. We're on social media, we're doing some paid advertisements to really get this word out. And while at the same time, begin to address questions and concerns. And soon, as you'll hear later, This will eventually morph in possibly into, what the future looks like for the penny. But for now, I'm here to talk about the past and the present, and then following me, you're going to hear a whole lot about the future and certainly make some decisions there amongst yourselves. So if you want to put it into the perfect. So since 2012, we've been on a roll, lots of play-ons with the sensational results. I won't go in detail for each slide, but I'll kind of hit some of the highlights, and we'll have some time for some Q&A afterwards. But if you want to keep us rolling, Dan. Yeah, so a lot of this centers around some key areas: safety, accessibility, workforce, education, healthcare, and economic development. So this is kind of the buckets of improvements, if you will. Hit it one more time. There you go. So since the inception of the penny, these are some of the changes that have come to Richland County. Obviously, we're not saying the penny is directly responsible for any of these, but without a doubt has had an impact. So growth in businesses, growth in jobs, decrease in unemployment, huge growth in economic investments, certainly over the last 5 years, and of course, new annual visitors.
That 20,000 new jobs is to date. It's not projecting future jobs.
Correct. That is actually as of December 2020.
So it's not. Is it taken into like the scouts and the large employers?
It is not taking into account those projected the jobs that have not yet come to fruition.
Thank you.
So that would grow if we added those in. This is just looking at from 2012 to 2023. What the growth in jobs has been. Good. So, and with all these, we've tried to give some specific examples. So we see that 4.7 economic investment, 4.7 billion economic investment. That's great. We know we can't tie that directly to the penny, but we've tried to give some examples along the way. One specific example is the $24 million penny investment to the extension of Shop Road into the Pineview Industrial Park, and the roughly $1.1 billion in economic investments that led. So it's projects, many of those are you're familiar with. Yeah, keep going. All right, now we're going to take a look at some of the roads and infrastructure improvements. So 120 miles of roads resurfaced, over 500 new roadways, bikeways, and greenways completed, 11 new intersections, and 85 dirt roads paved. And obviously, this is taking a look at what's completed. There are currently still projects ongoing. And then here we're trying to give some specific examples of the impact of those. It's great to have a road paved or a sidewalk or a new intersection, but what does it actually mean? So here's some really great stats that Chelsea and her team at Richland County have provided us in terms of accident reduction. It takes a couple of years to get this data, as you would imagine, but we're seeing clear reduction in traffic instances, and wait time, and of course accidents, which is great. And I think that's something that people lose sight on. Obviously they get frustrated with road improvements, but when you see the impact after a few years, I think it really helps tell the story. Always, just like here with the comment, which we'll get to, try to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. AAA rating is only 1 of 3 counties in South Carolina, the other 2 being the big boys, Charleston and Greenville. So that's great that Richland County has maintained that. And then, always getting awards for excellence in financial reporting and accountability. So just a good reminder to the people of how Richland County as a whole is managing taxpayer dollars. So the stuff you really care about, penny, being the comment, and 1/3 of the penny. So this is something we work closely with Pam on to really talk about. We can look at the penny as a whole, but look what the comment has been able to accomplish with just 1/3 of that. So miles increased, and one caveat I'll say here is these are 2021 numbers, still working with Pam to get some updated ones, but we want to make sure the numbers are correct, so we're using 2021 here. So increase in miles. Increase in routes offered. Keep going. Bus shelters, the growth in those.
It's growth just in Richland County.
And
It's Richland and Lexington, but mostly Richland.
new buses. Keep going. Wonderful. And just like Richland County, the comment has continued to do a great job of managing its budget and the funds given to it. So one thing that I think was talked about when the penny first came about in 2012, but no one has really talked about since then, is that a large chunk of these funds, roughly 40%, is coming from outside of Richland County. So when people come here, whether they come to the zoo or event at a Colonial Life Arena or wherever they are, and they stay in Columbia, they shop in Columbia or Richland County, that money, is again invested here. So it's not free money, but it's money that we wouldn't have that are not directly invested by the taxpayers here. So just an important reminder that 40% or roughly 400 million of the penny, once it's collected, will have come from outside the
Is that
county.
accurate? How can you predict, or how can you indicate that 40% by
Yeah.
what mean?
Yeah, so that was a study that was done in 2012 on the impact. Now, we don't have the exact numbers on what that looks like today, but it's believed to still be that roughly 60-40 breakdown. Keep going. And then in addition to the money coming from outside the county, we've been able to leverage those funds through interest, matching grants, and money that you have to have money to get, and that's added roughly 10% thus far. And that does not include matching funds that the Common has received. Y'all get a lot of federal matching funds for a lot of your projects. So this is just from the Richland County side of the equation. So roughly 67 million that has come more or less for free because the penny has been in effect. So that's kind of a very brief overview. The county has also stood up a really great website that has a lot of this information, plus a lot of happenings in the community. It has all of the current and upcoming projects that are planned. Has a link to sign up for their great newsletter. And it will be where we house a lot of this information and provide it to the public. As I mentioned, we'll be going out into the community with Richland County staff. I know Pam and Director Pearl are also making presentations as well to the Common's constituents. So this will be happening in a very grassroots manner. There'll also be some messaging over the top. You may see in the newspaper and on social media talking about some of this. But this is really separate from what the future of the penny is. But this is a holistic look on and what it has done thus far. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can hand it off to talk about the future. Yes, sir.
Are you getting the same information that we are getting in reference to roads? Hardscrabble, I've heard that it won't be completed until 2025.
Yeah, so I'm not the expert, but I'll know enough to be dangerous. My understanding, Hardscrabble is not a county road, it's a state-owned and maintained road. So SCDOT is in charge of Hardscrabble and the work that's going there. Now, there's a piece of penny funds that have gone to support SCDOT along with federal and state funds, but that is not a project that Richland County has oversight for. which I think is really important. You know, they can beg and plead with SCDOT, but at the end of the day, you know, that's who's responsible. And, you know, so questions really towards the issues or updates with hardscrabble really need to go to the SCDOT. Is anything, is that fair?
Yeah, but Richland County is paying for it, isn't it?
Not a very small piece of it. Richland County has invested funds for, but the vast majority, I don't know what the exact economic breakdown is, but the vast majority is coming from DOT, SCDOT.
The investment was at the beginning of the project.
Correct.
So the investment that the county has made is long gone. You know, I think the project's delays are due to utility relocation, and there was some, you know, back and forth with the city of Columbia. So I think there's a lot of information out there that indicates what the delays were, but Richland County's portion of it has been completed for quite some time.
Well, 2 years ago, I was told the same reason is being delayed now. It was delayed 2 years ago. And I drive up and down Hartscrabble every day. And you don't feel good about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are frustrated there, but I think it's important to know who that frustration should be directed to, because unfortunately, you know, local and county government doesn't have a whole lot of management and oversight of the project there. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for granting me some time, and get back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That'll bring us to item number 4, Parker Poe and Stantec presentations. I see Ray Jones on the screen, and I see Mr. Beatty here in the room with us. I'll let you guys take over.
David, you want to start?
Absolutely. I'll take Ryan's spot over here. Good morning, everybody. I'm David Beatty with Stantec Consulting, and my portion of the presentation can be relatively brief. I'll respect your time, but I'll be available for questions. So Richland County engaged Stantec really to do 2 things: to identify roadway-related transportation needs across Richland County, and then come up with an idea of how much those needs would cost in today's dollars. So what we did is we started with the Central Midlands Council of Government. They have a long-range plan of projects. So we captured those established projects in Central Midlands plan. Then we reached out to each municipality within Richland County and asked for their requested or identified projects that they've identified within their municipality. Then what we did is we had a series of public meetings. We had 11, one in each council district. And we prepared maps by district, and we presented within each district the projects that we had gathered from Richland County, from Central Midlands, from the municipalities. And we even showed projects that the DOT was planning on doing. And we presented the existing planned projects to the public in the months of really January and February. And we had over 200 members of the public sign in to these meetings. And we had over 300 written comments identifying what the public felt are needed projects across Richland County. So we added those projects to a 2-page list of identified projects across Richland County. Then our next task was to estimate, well, how much would that cost? So we identified projects could be widening a road, different types of intersection improvements, bikeways, sidewalks. And in 2024 dollars, we estimated back in the first part of March that to build all of those transportation roadway related projects, to construct them, but also to design, buy the right of way, move the utilities, and then manage the construction, the all-in number is just over $2 billion. Now, that would be for that list of projects in today's dollars. Now, that is just a data point, that is information that we have gathered and we have provided to Richland County, their Transportation Ad Hoc Committee, and TPAC. So that's just a data point of projects that have been identified and how much they would cost in present day dollars. Now, at some point, as that list is modified, as the potential years of a potential tax is determined, then I'll revise that total cost estimate. But until the decision makers decide on exactly how they plan on moving forward, my services are kind of on pause right now. We've identified the projects, we've identified the cost, and we'll update those as we're directed in the near future. But I do want to point out that this 2 billion plus in projects is only related to roadway projects. That number does not include the needs of the Comet moving forward. So that's a separate discussion that Mr. Pearl will provide later. So that really summarizes how we've established the project list and the estimated cost. With that, Madam Chair, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? Okay, yes.
So today's dollars versus 7 years from now when something might actually be done, how are you managing that escalation? I think that is historically, it was a serious issue, the first penny.
Well, when we estimated today's construction dollars, we use current projects as examples. We look at national trends to establish the current cost of a particular project today. Then we've added a 15% contingency on that individual project for the future unknowns.
No, I'm not sure that's enough, but then I'm not a decision maker. I'm just an observer.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, that will bring us to, I believe we're on number 5. No, I'm sorry. Was there someone else?
Parker.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones.
Afternoon. Sorry, I couldn't join you in person. I guess my first question is more a technical question. I've got something I'd love to show you on the screen. And I've also sent it to Pamela. Is that something we can pull up, or can I share my screen?
You can share your screen. I don't see a notice, but
That's no problem. Long as I can share my screen, we're in good shape. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Fantastic. So just on behalf of my colleague, Emily Luther, I'm Ray Jones with Parker Poe, and we've been working with the county and a much larger team of people that we're now delighted to say includes the Comet on, and we appreciate just Maurice's involvement, his attendance at some of the council meetings, and just sort of making sure that the Comet is there, and that the items and concerns that ultimately will impact the Comet are being heard. So we appreciate that very much. Appreciate an opportunity to be with you. What I was going to do just briefly, and Mr. Ratio will have seen this before, but I wanted to give you all a sense as the Comet Board of Directors, sort of the process that is underway and kind of where everything fits and what the dates look like. And also we'll sort of take off a little bit from what the Stantec work that Mr. BoD explained, sort of, where that is right now and how we get that actually to an actionable set of projects. Let me just start with what we call the penny roadmap. This roadmap is a very long list of important steps and meetings that need to occur along the way. This roadmap has been discussed, debated, and ultimately approved by the County Council. There are 3 bodies that are currently represented on the roadmap. It's the County Council. All of their actions occur in orange. It's the county's Transportation Penny Advisory Committee. All of their actions occur in yellow. And then it's the County Council's Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. And these 3 bodies are working together to get us to a point where we're able to give our penny ordinance its final reading on July 16th, which is one of the very last portions of the roadmap. Between here and there, what's going on, and I'll point out that the county did have first reading on its ordinance last night, and I'll speak to that a little bit. But what's going on is we're seeking the advice and inputs on several categories of projects. One of the critical categories of projects, obviously for this penny, are comment-related projects, and I'll show you those these project categories here. This is the list that is currently in the county's ordinance and has been discussed with county council, with TPAC, and with the ad hoc committee. And so as we look at the next penny, we're really looking at 3 categories of projects that will be addressed by the next penny. The first one is community investment projects, which are projects that impact the day-to-day lives of the citizens in the county. We call them closer to home projects. Then we have county advancement projects, which are projects that have countywide impact. And finally, we have comment enhancement projects. And so we have described those as projects that target the operation and expansion of the comment. These projects include operational sustainability, establishment of new routes, new construction and improvements to enhance rider safety and comfort, and acquisition of new buses and other modes of transportation. And so these are all our working definitions. We invite input from the comment board, comments legal counsel on to make sure that the description of these projects is sufficiently broad to include the list of items that the comment is seeking to address with the next penny. And we've got time because our next reading of the penny ordinance is not set to occur until May 7th. And that's intentional, that we had a month-long delay between first and second reading, not only to allow some of the work to be done by the Transportation Advisory Committee and ad hoc, but also to invite additional input from bodies like yours. So again, if you have input on the way we've described the comment enhancement projects, please share it, and we'll make sure to get it included. So one of the most important things that sort of is the work, if you will, to be done by the roadmap is represented by this slide. So the needs inventory is what Mr. Beatty has just described to you. It is a very long list of needs that has been cultivated from the work that Stantec has done. At some point, we've got to take those needs and turn them into an actionable list of projects. And of course, the projects then need to be appropriately categorized to fall within one of the project categories that we've been discussing. So this idea of having principles that are being applied to filter the projects, these are examples of principles or the types of questions that are supposed to be answered by the principles. For instance, how will they be spent? Where will they be spent? What factors will influence how they be prioritized? And likewise, how much might be reserved for future projects that aren't yet on the board, but invariably could become part of the need. And so this is the task that is being fulfilled through all the steps in the roadmap. We had a conversation this morning with the chairman of the TPAC. He is very energetic about helping us do this. But largely, just to be clear, this process largely is where we're examining the community investment and county advancement projects. We will be working with the comment with your board and with your staff and legal counsel on where the comment enhancement projects fit and what the priorities within the comment enhancement projects will be. We need a lot of help in this process, and this sort of illustrates that the Transportation Advisory Committee and the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee have both are serving roles in this process, and we'll be reporting and working together to report to County Council how the prioritization and categorization of the project should be accomplished. The project principles we talked about a little bit, but these will be guidelines established by council with advice and input of TPAC and the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee to help guide the prioritization and categorization of the projects. Finally, and maybe the biggest question on everybody's mind is, well, how much money are we talking about? If you look at the County Council's ordinance that was given first reading last night, there's still some blanks to be filled in, and there's some important blanks. One is how long will the penny go? And it's intended to be established as a new penny, and so they have the opportunity to take it as long as 25 years if they wish. There's still conversations around whether it should be 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. That has a lot to do with the costs that need to be taken care of with the penny. And then, of course, once we understand how much money we're dealing with, we have to make decisions about how then to assign those dollars to each of the individual project categories, to include the comments project category. And so all of those are conversations that we anticipate will unfold over the next couple of months, and we anticipate they will unfold not in a vacuum, but with a lot of conversation and a lot of work being done by all the bodies that are represented, including this one. Madam Chair, let me stop there. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm looking around the room. Anyone have questions or comments for Mr. Jones? Or anyone online? Okay, thank you for that presentation. Now I believe that brings us to item 5, Mr. Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the board packet, there is a comment peer group comparison, and I will just, there's a lot of transit speak within this document, so I'm just going to highlight some of the main points in here and talk about, basically we'll just start off with the peer comparison, and that is of comparable size transit systems operating in matching size cities and similar operating conditions. This document will provide overall performance insight to the performance of the comment. So performance is based on the amount of service supplies and resulting ridership and cost effectiveness. So under peer group, the peer group is based on the urbanized area population data. This is from the 2020 census. And this information was gathered from the National Transit Database, which is an open source information. The two major components of transit performance are service supplied and service consumed. Service supplied measures the revenue hours of service that Comet provides to its customers. Under service supplied, revenue hours and revenue miles are the measures of how much service is supplied by the Comet. And then within the table here, you can see within the UZA where Columbia stands and then what the average is. And that's in the blue. So the table 1 shows the amount of service supplied by Comet and its peers. And then the average is down at the bottom. So on the next page, Comet is average in comparison to the peer group. It is within 6% of the peer group average for service supplied. Under service consumed measures the usage of the system. This is an indication of market penetration of the total transportation market. And within this, the table 2, the ratios of passengers per capita and cost per passenger reflect the effectiveness of the service provided. And again, it's the same list of comparable peers. So while service supplied in table 1 is like the peer group, the ridership of the current service is below the peer group average. Ridership per capita is a measure of system effectiveness, and it is more than 25% below the peer group. This usually indicates some inefficiency in service, with fixed routes performing at a low performance level, circuity of routing with long travel times and frequencies that are not attractive to current or potential passengers. On cost efficiency, this measures the service usage as a function of the cost of service. And then in table 3, the ridership characteristics in table 2 are below average, and the cost per passenger is very high, 24.5% above the average. However, the cost per passenger and cost per revenue are very good and within the 5% of the peer group average. This indicates that cost structure is appropriate for the size of the system, but the low ridership affects the cost per passenger. Increasing ridership will improve the cost per passenger ratio. And a summary of the peer group, Comet performs similar to its peers. It It is an average system in terms of service supplied and cost structure. Ridership is below the peer group, and that affects the data in table 2 that is based on ridership. Similarly, strategic investment in improved service delivery or improved services will likely improve the ridership-based ratios. And Roz and I had sat down and spoke with the consultant regarding the peer group and where we're at and what the vision, what the focus is for the Comet long-term and what the goals are. So, and on the cost per revenue hour is at $129.72 per hour. And the cost increase is based on a 6% increase over the 15 years. And that was based on a lot on fuel and personnel, and then also maintenance side. We've had engines that have been doubled in price and maintenance. So the cost to provide service has gone up considerably over the past 2 years due to supply issues. So the first, and this is based in millions of dollars. The first is a micro transit service, and that the dollar amount is there for the new cost of service, what that is annually, and then what that equates to after 15 years, which is like $42,747,000. The next is the out of town routes. If there are areas that are requiring service or need service outside of our current area, then these are the number of hours that we have discussed, and that would provide adequate out of town service. And then the other one, the last one, is the frequency of existing routes. So increasing service on the 01 routes, increasing the frequency is going to provide more reliability, better service, and increased ridership. So that's the third. And again, these are all long-term visions of how we can do what we can do to increase ridership. And we go on from there, and that what that cost is. So with potential for intermodal facility, with that in total, that would equate to $1.453 billion. And that would be up to the board's recommendation of what we would like to pursue going forward.
That's through 2039.
That is correct. Sir.
Thank you. Is that conclude your
Yes, ma'am.
presentation? Okay, thank you. Questions and comments from the board?
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Ford.
On these other projections started year 2023. When I go through the cost projection, it starts at 23. But what was the basis of coming up with our projection? What are we using as the baseline to project?
Baseline is 2023. Down at the bottom left-hand corner, it states that 2023 is not included in the total. So our baseline starts with our current budget. And then up in the upper right-hand corner is the Comet cost projection, which is our current budget amount. And that's our base. And that's based on a 6% annual increase.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Fergus? Okay, thank you. And I see Mr. Smith's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just I think I want to understand what we're doing with the information at this point. I mean, I gather this is part of the discussion around the renewal of Penny. Are we being asked to adopt this model, address issues of inefficiency, some combination of both of those things? I mean, it's really helpful information. I want to note that, but this is interesting and helpful comparisons with our peers, but then also the projections. But maybe some comments on what it is that we're doing with the information.
Thank you. If you could answer that.
Sure, the information is provided to the board for the board to have discussion on what they would like to pursue going forward. Or if this is something that the board is interested in pursuing some of the options that staff has provided here in working with the consultant as well. And how we want to proceed from here.
And I would say the bottom line for this process, and it won't be today, I mean, this is obviously your first meeting and looking at these numbers for the first time, but the end result is going to be an ask. What's the comment going to ask of the county? And right now we'd want to ask about half of the penny. That might be a little extreme, but I think the board asked the executive director to begin the process to quantify what would be needed for improvements in the comment going forward. And so I think this is the first big cut of those numbers.
Thanks,
Yes.
Franny. I think that answers my question. Obviously, there's some kind of operational questions embedded in this information that we may deal with in time in a different way, but I think that answers my more direct question. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Brennan.
So, Director Pearl, this total number of projected, currently, I think our budget's $45 million. Not all that $45 million comes from the transportation county funding. So this total number is total from all revenue sources that the comment pulls from.
Yes, sir.
So we're not looking at this final total number as the ask for the Richland County Transportation. That's where the discussion needs to come of this total number. What should the request be? Is that correct? And
Yes, sir.
Thought? Okay, thank you.
Anything further from the board? Okay. So we do not require a motion today. We just really need the board to contemplate this at this point. Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. So that will bring us to items, 5B, intermodal update. Mr. Brennan?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, just very briefly. We have been working towards the vision and path for a new intermodal facility, which will play into the efficiency and growth that you can see is projected in these numbers as our transit system keeps up with the growth that is coming to our region, our city and counties. Mr. Pearl, I believe we have put out RFPs for a intermodal planning consultant. Is that RFP open right now?
It is not open right now. We are in the process of completing that document, and Ms. Woodson is working on that.
Fantastic. So that is the first step, as well as an RFP for schematic design services to go hand in hand with that planning, intermodal planning consultant. So those two RFPs should be coming out soon with a time for responses. Outside of that, still negotiating a couple of property contracts for a potential intermodal facility, and that is all I have as of right now.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board regarding intermodal? Okay, hearing and seeing none, That will lead us to item 6, our executive session. We have 2 items for executive session. One is 6A, per section 30-4-70A2, discussion of negotiations incident to propose contractual arrangements as covered by the attorney-client privilege. And 6B, from section 30-4-70A5, discussion of matters relating to the proposed location expansion or the provision of services encouraging location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public. There a motion to go
Motion
into
to go into executive session. Second.
moved and properly seconded. We'll take the vote. We'll give Ms. Bonarita a second. Take the vote.
Ms. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Layton,
Yes.
Ms. Herbert,
Yes.
Representative Howard, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Unthank,
Yes.
Dr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Horacio,
Yes.
Councilman Walker. Motion carries.
So we were in executive session. We have had a motion and a second to come out of executive session and are now taking the vote to come out of executive session. Do we need to redo the motion?
And I have a motion by Mr. Ferguson and a second by Ms. Gleason.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson.
Yes.
Ms. Gleason.
Yes.
Ms. Herbert. Representative Howard, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Unthank,
Yes.
Dr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Horacio,
Yes.
Councilman Walker. Motion passed.
I don't believe we have motions coming out of executive session. That will bring us to item 7, adjournment. All right, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody, for your work today.